Grueling Truth Sports Network. My name is Sam McGinnis, one of your co-hosts for the Grueling Truth. I do that again. For the Sam and Sam show, I'd like to welcome on my other co-host, Sam Teets. How you doing?
I'm doing great, McGinnis. How about you?
I'm doing pretty good. We got a great show lined up for you today. We got some NFL news, some NBA news. We got some college football in the mix. We've got some NHL predictions coming up, along with some sports questions asked from some sports viewers later. So we're going to get to that a little bit later, but let's start with the NFL news.
Yeah, so we have seen a few COVID cases crop up here in the past week or so. The Steelers, Big Ben, obviously, is the big one. He had a COVID case pop up, and he's been out of practice. Obviously, hasn't been able to go to facility or practices. They are expecting him to participate in practice tomorrow, though, and be ready for the game, so I think he'll be perfectly fine. No harm there. Browns temporarily shut down their facility earlier today because of COVID-19 cases. It's basically the same stuff we've been hearing about all year long. It's just continuing throughout the whole process. I don't anticipate any games being canceled or moved. They haven't been canceled or moved in 2 or 3 weeks at this point. So I think we'll be fine, but just keep an eye on, COVID cases continue to make teams have to adjust during this time period. News, though, the really impactful news is Tennessee Titans losing to the Indianapolis Colts last night.
Yeah, absolutely. I was not expecting that, and I think Mike was talking about how they could be the number one if it was either other than Phillip Rivers. I don't remember exactly what he said, but the Colts really did dominate.
Yeah, they really did. I'll give them credit for that. They did better in special teams, certainly. Naheem Hines came through for them as the dynamic running back they have. Michael Pittman Jr., the rookie receiver, had over 100 receiving yards. And Phillip Rivers, the key to this game, Phillip Rivers did not turn the ball over. So despite Derrick Henry rushing for over 100 yards, the Colts were able to maintain possession, not making any stupid mistakes offensively, which is the last couple of games. And being able to maintain the ball like that, and not that block punt, that really helped them out as well. And there was also a shanked punt by Tennessee, so special teams helped them out quite a bit. Being able to do that really, have that lack of mistakes. Tennessee made a couple mistakes that really helped them out and win this game. And now they're first.
Yeah, and it really puts a little bit more perspective to the Titans at this point because one of their losses is also against the Bengals, so it's starting to get a little shaky. And on top of that, like you were saying with Phillip Rivers, it's usually his tag over the past year or so to throw interceptions at poor times. So the fact that he didn't turn the ball over is very important.
That was very important for the Colts and also very telling for the Titans. I think we're seeing that their Achilles heel has been their defense. It really has. I know special teams certainly didn't help them out much yesterday, and it was they only scored 17 points against the Colts. Colts scored 34. Again, special teams contributed to that, but also the Titans' defense is not that great. It was much better last year than this year, to some extent. And I think this team is a solid defense. It's a decent defense, top 16 maybe, but not top 10. This is not going to be a game-changing defense to me. And if you can't make Phillip Rivers turn the ball over, when this guy basically has no mobility in the pocket, he's known for throwing interceptions. You can't force him to turn the ball over once. That tells me quite a lot about your defense.
Yeah, and that's very unfortunate for them because their thing last year was giving Derrick Henry the ball and then letting their defense do their thing. If they can't do that again, they're going to have to find another way to go deeper in the playoffs this time around.
Well, you can rely on Ryan Tannehill usually and A.J. Brown, but Brown dropped a would-be touchdown early, I think, in the first quarter maybe. He had the defender beat. He goes score a touchdown and he dropped the ball. I think that really changed the momentum of the game. Also, Tannehill, after that drop, didn't really have a great game. Only 147 yards. It's the second game in a row where he hasn't had over 200, I'm pretty sure. And he usually is very reliable, usually a top 5 quarterback, at least for the first maybe 6 weeks of the season he was. And now he's kind of getting shaky and falling off a little bit here in the past 2 or 3 weeks.
Yeah, so some serious questions for Ryan Tannehill. What's up next?
Next in our show, we can go and do some quick NBA news because I know you want to get to the NHL stuff, so we'll do NBA real quick, and we'll get to your specialty. There's been a lot of stuff coming out of the NBA right now. The NBA season is going to be – the offseason is so short because they have to have the draft, free agency signings, training camps, and then start the season. It's all compacted so much together to the point that it's going to be crazy. It's going to be fun. There's not a lot of time off. Some of these guys, especially the players who play in the finals, so it'll be interesting to see how they manage themselves during the regular season. But we got Victor Oladipo from the Indiana Pacers. Apparently, during last season, was asking teams if he could come play for them. So basically, trying to get out of Indiana. There's rumors that Russell Westbrook has asked for a trade if there aren't significant changes to Houston.
For Victor there, I actually, funny enough, I saw something else. He's now like, I'm not sure if he's backpedaling at this point so he doesn't get booted from the organization or what's up. But he was saying, no, he's fully committed. So I'm curious as to whether that's just him throwing bullcrap or whether that's him just trying to be honest.
Yeah, no, I saw the news too. And to me, that's total BS because you will say that regardless to try to. I mean, look, you can't cut the way the NBA works. The salaries are guaranteed. Yeah, well, the salaries are guaranteed for the NBA, so it's not the same thing with the NFL where it's like, oh, we can cut you and save all this kind of money. It's not going to work the same way financially. So you're not in as much trouble of getting cut or anything like that. To me, this is Victor Oladipo just trying to like save his kind of like his image in a sense. Because if you're a basketball player and you're viewed as a guy who's going to go out there going bad and try to sell yourself off to some other team, it doesn't very much speak to your basketball. So really, I think this is him saving face. I don't think there's any value behind this. If he got traded to a contender like the Boston Celtics or Miami Heat or something like that, I think he'd be ecstatic to go to a team like that versus where he is in Indiana right now.
Yeah, always unfortunate to be the guy on the team that's good, but then stuck on the team that you're on. I think we've seen that a lot.
He's been hurt the last 2 years too, so it's not like he's been playing at superstar level.
Right. Yeah, it's just a lot of unfortunate things can happen with teams. I think Connor McDavid comes up to mind to me, but that's just one of the examples I think of.
Yeah, no one wants to be the superstar. No one wants to be that's not winning.
Yeah,
but
absolutely not.
Also, I want to talk about the Houston Rockets because Russell Westbrook supposedly has asked for trade unless there are significant changes made within the Houston organization. This is a team and has an owner that has come out and said publicly that he wants to keep James Harden, Russell Westbrook around. They've already changed their head coach. They've already changed their general manager this offseason. And they also had a string of reports coming out, guys like Daniel House, PJ Tucker, Eric Gordon. These guys are happy with how they're even used, how their contracts are working out, their playing time. They're all upset with the Houston Rockets. And these are all current players on the team. And they even had guys like Trevor Ariza, who was a former player of the team, said he basically wouldn't resign with them because of the way he perceived the organization. So to me, and things are starting to fall apart here in Houston, and a lot of it, and it doesn't look good for the Houston Rockets.
Yeah, and that's a little odd, I would think, because normally the Houston Rockets are a powerhouse, if I'm not mistaken.
Well, no, I mean they had made the finals one year. They pushed. They're usually a pretty good team. They're usually a top 10 team, I would say. The issue has been they've never gotten over the hump. They've never made an NBA Finals with James Harden. And there have been so many issues with coaching and personnel decisions, and the roster is so dependent on Harden and Westbrook. There's so much money tied up in those salaries. There's so many issues with this team right now and how it's built. They don't have a center because they were playing micro ball during the bubble time. They got destroyed by the Lakers, who had one of the biggest lineups in the NBA. So, I mean, there's so many issues in Houston. I can understand the frustration, but it's also just not being able to get over the hump. These are guys in Russell Westbrook and James Harden. Last time they made the finals when they were playing with Kevin Durant in Oklahoma City, and they got manhandled by LeBron James and the Miami Heat. So to me, this is a team with two superstar players who haven't won. They're getting up there in age. They're in their early 30s. They're desperate to win, and now their tensions are kind of rising a little bit in Houston.
Yeah, getting hotter for sure. What's next?
Last thing I want to talk about for NBA news is the Phoenix Suns are supposedly discussing a trade for Chris Paul from the Oklahoma City Thunder. Now, Chris Paul is obviously a future Hall of Famer. People thought he dropped off quite a bit in the past couple of years. Like, he came out this past season, second-team All-NBA, so basically a top 10, well, not top 10 player per se in the league, some talent, but one of the best performers in the league. And this is a guy who had a great year. He led the Thunder a much better record than what people anticipated. People thought the Thunder weren't even going to make the playoffs. They ended up being the 5 seed in the West Conference. So he was the leader in the team. He was probably the best player. So if you get Chris Paul on a team that has Devin Booker, Ricky Rubio, and those guys in Phoenix, I think that'd be a great move for the Suns.
Yeah, and it's really about adding stars in the NBA. I mean, we've talked about that before. I even feel that maybe if Houston was able to add one more, they would have a much better shot at winning a championship if they had an additional star there. But then also,
I agree with you there. I don't think it would be financially possible.
You see, that's where the problem comes in, is sometimes you've dug yourself into a hole.
Well, yeah, I think over 50%, I'm pretty sure, of the salary cap for the Houston Rockets is dedicated to Russell Westbrook and James Harden. because they're both making I believe they're both making over $30 million a year. So I mean, they're making ridiculous money to the point that they don't have much maneuverability. It's hard to have 3 stars on a team nowadays without one player sacrificing. Otherwise, you end up with a team like the Miami Heat. When LeBron was there, they had a bench for maybe 1 or 2 of those years, but other than that, the other 2 years he was there in Miami, they really didn't have a bench whatsoever because they had put money to 3-star players, and they weren't able to afford much else beyond that.
Sometimes just money can be interesting with those organizations. Especially, you're reminding me of the Maple Leafs because they've dedicated a vast majority of their salary to 3 players, and it's just you need to be able to spread it out more sometimes.
Oh yeah, absolutely. But we're going to start talking about the NHL. Much into your NHL news, so let's hear it out, McGinnis.
All right, so I promised I would do this. So we're going to get into a little bit of NHL predictions for the Metropolitan Division. Now, note these are subject to change when we start up the NHL Weekly Show again a little later before the season starts. This is a little bit early, but I wanted to go through the Metropolitan Division, which is probably going to be, again, the toughest division in the NHL once again, and just kind of lay it out, and me and Sam Teets are going to go a little bit back and forth here with this. So my number 1 for this is going to be the Philadelphia Flyers. Now, some people are going to pick the Washington Capitals for this, and normally I would, but I don't know how long they can sustain not having sufficient goaltending. Last year, Braden Holtby statistically did pretty much horribly. He had John Carlson, fantastic defenseman. He had a good offense around him, so it wasn't like there was nothing there. And they were still number 1. But how long can they sustain something like that? I don't know how much of an upgrade Henrik Lundqvist is really going to be. So for me, that's really the reason you got to put Washington down just a spot at number 2. Whereas Philadelphia, you've got the best face-off team in the league. You've got Carter Hart, an emerging fantastic goalie. You've got just a team that can beat other great teams. That's one of the big points I pointed out last year that I really liked about them, is that every time I watched them play a great team, they always won. And if they can start having some consistency with some of the other teams they play, they can really make something of themselves here and take up that number 1 spot. So number 1, Philadelphia, 2, Washington, because of goaltending, and things have to shift somewhat within a division.
Well, if Washington figures out the goaltending, and if Lundqvist is a significant signing to the point where he's making a huge addition to the team, does that put Washington back in first place?
Yeah, I think absolutely it does. See, there's the question. Is the equation is 2 things. You got to figure that there has to be some sort of change in a division. You can't just rack it out the same as it was year over year. It doesn't work, right? So you got to look for who's going to be the weak link in all of this, even if it's just a spot, right? So let's look at the goaltending. Henrik Lundqvist didn't perform great this past season. At least from a statistical standpoint, he didn't. So the Rangers have moved on from Henrik Lundqvist, which is unfortunate for him in that organization, but he's actually moved himself into a better team. But he is very old. He's had a lot of seasons under his belt, so the question is going to become, can he be effective enough for the team to overcome teams like the Flyers and consistently do what they normally do? They still have Ovechkin and most of the core. They're going to be fine. They're going to do great. It's just how great that they're going to be.
Do you think that the top team from the Metropolitan, do you call it the tough division in hockey? Do you think the team, like, you think the winner of the Metropolitan is going to be the favorite to win the Stanley Cup?
That is a potential, but I kind of doubt it. People will probably end up saying it's the Lightning again, and now I won't be able to make fun of them. But for me, you got to think about this. In the Metropolitan, what do we have? Well, this past season, we had obviously the Capitals. We had the Flyers, both fantastic teams. You had the Penguins, who are a good team. You had the Blue Jackets, who did exceptional considering all their injuries. You have the Hurricanes, and you have the Islanders. You essentially have 6-7 teams, including the Rangers, that could possibly make the playoffs. There's literally only one team in here you cannot really consider a contender, which is insane. So with that in mind, you've got 7 of 8.
Yeah, that's true. But don't Didn't the Central Division go 8? I mean, didn't the Central Division go 8 for 8? Didn't they send all 8 teams?
The Central Division is also very packed, but here's a little bit of the difference between those two. So Central, I actually ran out some rankings earlier last year, and I had the Central at number 2. You do have this the St. Louis Blues. You do have the Avalanche, who improved this offseason, by the way. So you've got that out, but I do truly believe you're going to look at the Metropolitan when we get through it all. They're still going to be the number 1. The Central might be 2, but the Metropolitans really got them on the market of toughness.
All right, I'll buy into the market of toughness. Who do you think is going to be number 3 in the
number 3?
The Metropolitan.
I have the Pittsburgh Penguins, but then there comes again the goaltending question. So for me, Tristan Jarry, he was fantastic last season. Okay, he started up. He's essentially replaced Matt Murray now, who they've traded away to the Senators. But that was 1 year. If he sustains this, they can absolutely make the 3rd spot, and I'm assuming that he will. But if he doesn't, and they have goaltending issues, they could drop off a little bit. So it's going to rest.
They were what, only one game back on the Flyers and Capitals this past year, so they were right those 2 teams.
They were close. I'm just saying, Tristan Jarry had a fantastic year, but if it's just the 1 year, because if you think about it, the Penguins are buying on 1 year from what they've seen. They're buying on him. So if that buy ends up being a mistake, they're really going to regret it, and they're going to see it in their wins also.
All right, who do you got number 4?
Number 4, I have the Blue Jackets. So I wanted to put them high, but I couldn't do it. They made one really good move this past season. We've talked about it a ton. I'm not going to talk about it anymore. But I don't think the one move is going to be enough. I think they're still a little inconsistent. Part of that last year may have been due to injury, but they actually did better when they had all those injuries, which is odd. But yeah, they'll be a contender for a playoff spot. They might make a little bit noise in the playoffs. We don't know yet. I don't really think we're going to see that much different from the Blue Jackets, but I think they've made a step in the right direction.
And they're just ahead of the Hurricanes, so you have number 5, right?
Yeah, so the Hurricanes I have at number 5. They kind of fell off a little bit at the end of last year, along with the Blue Jackets and the Islanders, by the way. Again, this comes back to you got to shift somebody. There's so many good teams in this division. You just got to pick somebody that you just got to shift. And I think that comes down in this case to the Hurricanes. The Hurricanes are a complete team. They've got offense. They've got defense, despite, they've lost Justin Williams, which is unfortunate due to retirement, but great career, 3-time Stanley Cup winner. Unfortunate to lose him, but they've also got goaltending that's sufficient. It's adequate. So their team is complete, but then we saw this inconsistency throughout the entire season, and it's just it leaves you with some question marks.
How do they overcome that kind of inconsistency, though? How do they get to the point where you would say this could be a top 3 team in the division?
I think, first off, one thing that comes to my mind is obviously you have to beat individual opponents, and that can start with the Blue Jackets. They haven't done very well against the Blue Jackets this last season, and if they had those wins, they might be in a better position. So maybe start there, and just overall maybe the culture. You just got to find a way to be consistent, because that's what the NHL is about.
All right, so you had the Hurricanes there. What's your next team up? We're down to number 6 now.
Okay, number 6, I'm calling the New York Rangers. Okay, so they've put, I think, possibly the right goalie. I still kind of would have liked Henrik Lundqvist to stay, but Igor Shesterkin is there. Okay, he went 10-3 during the regular season with them when he came in as a goaltender. So it's your goalie that's doing well right now. Problem is, I don't think it's enough yet to push them over the hump, especially being in the division that they're in. It's just unfortunate. They might be better if they were in a different division, but they're the young team coming up, but I just don't see it happening this year with the push.
How long are you willing to wait to see if this team turns into that kind of contender? Is it going to be, not this season, but next season? Is it going to be 2 years down the line? What are we looking at here for timetable?
So it could be anywhere between 1 year and 2. I mean, honestly, they just got to be aggressive during a free agency or 2, and I think they might be able to move themselves up a few spots.
Are they one or two pieces away, or is it more?
It depends on what we see from the goaltending. If Igor turns out to be what he was during the regular season last year, they're not far off. But if he's not, and they still kind of get this we don't exactly know what's going on, they're going to have to get maybe a couple pieces. I'm not exactly sure on that one. They just need a little bit more. They're not there yet. It's just a lot of it is the division they're in, at least some of it. It's just unfortunate for a team that could be a little bit more being in the hardest division in the NHL. And it's just like, well, do you think they're going to pass the Hurricanes or the Blue Jackets? Well, no. It's just unfortunate for them.
But you think they're going to pass the New York Islanders, who you have at number 7?
Yeah. So the New York Islanders lost Thomas Greiss. This is unfortunate. So they're left with Varlamov, who proved to be a great goaltender last year. Okay, like he's a good goaltender. He knows what he's doing. Problem is, you now do not have a backup. Thomas Greiss was a good backup, and he's headed to Detroit probably to try on that first spot for them. And they still don't have an offense to be heard of. So without an offense, and you're losing now part of what was your strength, which is defense and goaltending, you're now losing a piece of that. They have a chance, especially with how they were performing at the end of this last season, to just prove that they can't do it right now.
And that would bring us to the final team, the New Jersey Devils. What do the Devils have to do to get out of the basement of the Metropolitan Division?
Perhaps new management, perhaps adding pieces that don't suck, getting goaltending would help. This team needs to try again. They're just in one of those times where you just got to try again. They truly are rebuilding. It's always a time that's unfortunate. My team's rebuilding. Trust me, the Red Wings, I get it. I'm happy we got Greiss. I think he's a good goalie. But yeah, it's just an unfortunate position to be in when you're rebuilding. There's a lot wrong with this team. There have been clips I have seen. It's absolute clowns. They had one of their guys actually score on themselves this last year, which was, oh, that was sad. But not being a New Jersey Devils fan, this does not affect me that much.
In a rebuild in the NHL, how long do you anticipate it would take the Devils to rebuild this team? I mean, is it like a 2-year process, a 3-year process? Are we looking like long-term, like 4 or 5?
So the NHL I think, might be able to have a variety, because we've seen teams like the Avalanche where they went from like nothing to something in a year. But at the same time, there's probably those teams that take a long time. Do I trust the Devils management, though? Probably not. So you might be here a while.
All right, well, that's it for your projections for the NHL NHL Metropolitan Division. Is there anything else you want to talk about hockey related, or are we good to move on to college football?
We're good to move on to college football, and it was interesting without Trevor Lawrence, wasn't it?
Yeah, and that was always unfortunate. I mean, I really thought Clemson was still going to win. I'll be honest with you. I really thought Clemson was still going to win. I think Clemson's the better team. No, it's double overtime, 40-47. Notre Dame wins at Notre Dame. Yeah, we're probably going to play in the ACC championship game again, and we're going to beat them in the ACC championship game, so I'm not that worried. The issue for me is, though, Clemson got out-coached, especially in the second half here against Notre Dame. I know Clemson half team with DJ Uiagalelei at quarterback and with Trevor Lawrence basically out with COVID-19. They've been a second half team. And they were scoring in the second half. They had multiple opportunities to just put this game away. So when Ian Buck fumbled the ball into the end zone in the third quarter, he fumbled it into Clemson's end zone because they were driving to score. Clemson gets that ball back. If the Tigers drive down the field and score there, they basically crush all of Notre Dame's momentum, and the Fighting Irish are basically dead in their feet. They punt the ball back to the Irish within like 3 minutes. They didn't run the clock at all. They didn't get down the field. They didn't get onto the Irish side of the field. So to me, that was an epic failure there. That was the first part where things went wrong. And the second part was Notre Dame turned the ball over on downs. I think with 2 minutes and 10 seconds left, or about 2 minutes and 10 seconds left. Clemson only ran 30 seconds off the clock before punting the ball back to Notre Dame, and then Notre Dame led a game-tying drive that forced overtime. Clemson's defense should have never gone back on the field. They should have been able to run that 2 minutes, 10 seconds clock down to 0. They should have won the game right there in regulation. It was horrible game management. Travis Etienne ran out of bounds with stop the clock and help Notre Dame out. And it was terrible play calling. So to me, Notre Dame just outcoached Clemson down the line. Of course, Clemson dealt with injuries. They didn't have Trevor Lawrence. They didn't have James Skull, the starting middle linebacker, who is their defensive captain. They lost the starting guard during the game. They lost the starting safety. They had a lot of injuries. And they were already without a starting defensive tackle, defensive. They had a ton of injuries already. I don't think you can push that aside. I mean, you can obviously say they'll win the rematch in the ACC championship game. I've already said that. The issue, though, for me is that they just got outcoached. They got beat because they were terrible at game management. They didn't take advantage of clear opportunities.
You're giving me some scares like the Atlanta Falcons. Not that I'm a Falcons fan, but it brings me back to a little bit of that. Just poor
Don't you ever compare the Clemson Tigers to the Atlanta Falcons, Sam McGinnis.
Why? Because Clemson might beat the Atlanta Falcons?
No, they could never do that. Let's not start with the whole college football team will beat an NFL team. That won't happen. But no, I mean, Clemson Tigers. This is the first loss, the first regular season loss for Clemson in like 2 or 3 years. So I don't want to hear any comparisons to the Atlanta Falcons.
You were just giving me some scares. It just reminded me of Super Bowl 51.
That's true. But it's not like we blew a lead, though. I mean, we had a comeback. We were down at halftime, so it's not like it's not like a lead was blowing the situation.
Yeah, it's at least better in that sense. But yeah, for coaching, that's always an important factor. And with those injuries coming back, with it being so close, you're right, they might win. So I wouldn't maybe be too worried. But at the same time, Notre Dame deserves some respect, I think, for this.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, Kyron Williams, their running back, played fantastic. So I have to give him a lot of credit. He was great in pass protection, too, which is something I didn't anticipate because I'll admit I haven't watched a ton of Notre Dame games prior to this one. So I'm not going to say, like, I knew everything to expect. I knew something to expect. I have a podcast, see recap every week with a Notre Dame fan or someone who covers Notre Dame for a different website. So it's not like I didn't know what to expect. I kind of had an idea what was coming. But Kyron Williams was much better than I anticipated. And Ian Book, who usually makes big mistakes in big games, he had the fumble, of course. But other than that, he was basically perfect, and he was clutch, which he hasn't been in the past. So to me, it was different than what I expected, honestly, from Notre Dame. And I give him a lot of props because, like I said, Ian Book played well. Kyron Williams was phenomenal. He's better than Travis Etienne that day. So a lot of props to Notre Dame. They played great.
Do you think there is an outside shot that they could win the national championship?
No, I don't think Notre Dame's that good. And that's not to be a shot against them. I think they're good enough to make the college football playoffs. The issue is Alabama, Clemson to me, when fully healthy, are just on a different level. I mean, I would throw Notre Dame in the same classification as a Florida Gators or a Georgia Bulldogs. So put them in that class. They're a good team. They're competitive, competing for one of the spots in the college football. To me, you look at Alabama, you look at Clemson, and maybe Ohio State. I haven't figured them out yet because they have played so little football compared to all these other programs so far. I think those three schools, those three teams, have the ability to be elite, and to me, they're heads and shoulders above every other program in the game right now.
Gotcha. All right, what's up next for college football?
I was going to talk a little bit about the Florida Gators being the Georgia Bulldogs this past weekend, and we can see it why. I mean, we just talked about the AP Top 25. I have it pulled up here. Georgia was number 4. No, Georgia was number 5 last week when they went to play Florida. Florida was number 8. Florida beat them. Georgia's now down to number 12, and that was the second loss of the season. So the Bulldogs are basically eliminated from the college football playoffs. And now we got teams like Texas A&M and Florida competing, and Cincinnati as well. Just Mike would be upset mentioning the Cincinnati team. You know, he keeps pulling for them, and I keep telling him they're not going to make it. I keep telling them they would lose to a team like Clemson, but he's convinced the Cincinnati Bearcats would win. So, you know, you never know with Mike Goodpass. But to me, it's coming down to a close race. I think there's honestly maybe 8 teams this year that could make a spot, including BYU and Cincinnati, 2 teams that are not Power 5 conference teams. I would still lean to Clemson's going to get in. I still believe that Alabama will get in. I think Ohio State will get in because they're Ohio State, so why not? And I'm pretty sure Notre Dame will still get in. I just don't know if Texas A&M or Florida can force their way into the top 4.
Gotcha. All right. And now from college football, we should be moving, or did I miss anything here?
No, we're good. We can move on thinking or dreaming.
All right. I just didn't want to – I wanted to make sure I didn't bluff over anything there. All right.
Oh wait, well, one more thing, just quickly. I'm not going to take into account this. There were 6 games this weekend that were either canceled entirely or postponed because of COVID-19. Just something to throw in there for the news wise. Other than that, I mean, I don't want to speak too much on that. 'Cause we've been hammered with COVID news the past months. I just wanted to throw it out there just as a little bit of news.
At least we got the good news of the vaccine, at least somewhat coming in, like legitimate news for once.
Yeah, hopefully something is coming here that will just get us over this. So I'm tired of it. I'm ready to go back to full on normal. But
all right, you want to kick us off? I think I did last time.
Yeah, thinking or dreaming. So in this segment, if you don't know, basically we both make statements. We just tell the other one if it's thinking or dreaming. If they're being smart, they're being dumb. So we're going to talk about some of the statements here, and these are not the sort of things we believe, but these are fairly debatable. So McGinnis, I have a question for you. The NHL offseason is too short, and we'll see an increase in sloppy play and injuries. Is that thinking or dreaming?
I think that's thinking, but that also depends on when they start. I've heard a lot of January 1st. I've heard a little bit of December 1st, which I think might be a little unrealistic. And then I've heard February 1st, which would drive me insane. If it's February 1st, maybe not. But you also have to think about now their schedule is mixed up. This isn't when they're normally starting. So that might mess them up also. So there's a lot of unknowns here. This could end up being thinking or dreaming in the end. But for right now, I'm going to leave it at thinking.
All right, now I'm going to throw you a little bit of curveball here. I usually don't ask about college football, but I am this time.
All right.
2 ACC teams will make the college football playoffs.
So this is in the realm of possibility because of Notre Dame. So I'll go with thinking here also. I would think that Notre Dame will end up playing Alabama and Clemson will end up playing Ohio State.
Now, I agree with you, actually. Based on what things that happened so far, I agree. That's probably what's going to happen. I just don't know if the committee was going to allow 2 ACC teams and only 1 SEC team. They love their Southeastern Conference so much. It annoys the hell out of me. But they do love them, and whatever drives ratings. But anyways, you've got some statements for me. Let's hear them.
All right, yeah. The first one I want to throw at you is Trevor Lawrence will stay for 1 more year and not go to the Jets. Because also that would just be unfortunate.
Yeah, I mean, there's been a lot of speculation over this. Lawrence has not officially stated what he's going to do, although there's rumors that scouts believe and executives in the NFL believe he's coming to the NFL. Dabo Swinney said he'd be shocked if he didn't go to the NFL. And to some extent, the Tigers have already prepared for life without Trevor Lawrence. We saw with DJ Uyunglele the past 2 games, and he played phenomenal, by the way. Both those situations, the loss to Notre Dame and the close game against Boston College, those were not on him. He played great football. So they, to some extent, they prepared to move on for Trevor Lawrence, and I think they obviously would love to have him back. But if we're talking about long-term future, you'd be worried about DJ transferring if Lawrence comes back for another year. So I think they kind of will nudge him a little bit to go to the NFL. And also, it's very good. It's just good business to go to the NFL when you're projected to be the number 1 overall pick, because you'll make a ton of money. Even if you play for a crap team like the Jets, you're getting so much money that you would risk losing if you stayed another year in college football. So I think this is dreaming. As a Clemson fan, I would love to have him back for another year, but it doesn't make a lot of sense for Trevor Lawrence, or makes sense for Clemson, but not as much as you might believe.
Of course, at the same time, is it really worth going to the NFL if you're on the Jets, which could potentially ruin your entire future in the NFL?
That's the other point. Although we have seen players go to the NFL and then force a trade from the team that drafts them. So it's not uncommon to see that happen. I mean, it is pretty uncommon, but we've seen it happen in the past. We've seen guys like Eli done it. So it's not out of the realm of question. To me, honestly, you have to go for the money. It's life-changing money. And if you were to break your leg and you come back for your senior season, you break your leg, and you only played 3 games. I mean, suddenly you're looking at being, well, maybe you're a top 20 player, but you're no longer being number 1. That's tens of millions of dollars potentially missing out there. So to me, I think you have to go. Even if it's Jets, you just gotta pray a lot and just hope that things change around in New York. But I don't know.
They're not. They're not gonna.
No, they're not going to.
So the second one then I bring up is Patrick Mahomes will win MVP ahead of Russell Wilson.
No, this is thinking, because honestly, I'm going to pull up the numbers right now so you can see me typing. That's what I'm doing.
It's
But he
25
has that.
one interception for Patrick.
Yeah, that's the number I was going after. I mean, he's got a great touchdown to interception ratio, even better. PCA's had 2 years ago in 2018. Or with Russell Wilson, he obviously was killing it for a while now, but he had 4 turnovers against Buffalo Bills. And now he's got 28 interceptions, still the most in the NFL. I mean, 28 touchdowns, which is still the most in the NFL. But he also has 8 interceptions, and his career high for interceptions is 11. He's looking like he's going to break that this year. He still has a 117.1 passer rating, but Mahomes has a 115.9. His team has more wins. They're at 8-1. I mean, Seattle's at 6-2. It's going to be close because they're both playing great. I could see Aaron Rodgers also sneaking his name into the MVP conversation. But right now, if you ask me today who the best quarterback in the NFL is, based on the season, it's Patrick Mahomes.
Oh, also, just a heads up, the MVP award is not an actual MVP award. It's just whoever the best quarterback is, just a heads up for anybody that did not know.
Yeah, I mean, what was the last MVP to not be a quarterback was Adrian Peterson. He deserved it that year. But there's very few players in the past 20 years who are not quarterbacks to win the award. No, LaDaine Tomlinson is one. But like I said, Sean Alexander, another. Just very few member players who will win the MVP and not be a quarterback.
Yeah, that actually kind of pisses me off a little bit because for me, just have a quarterback award also, and then have a legitimate MVP award. So that's
I agree with you there.
It's a little annoying. Like, don't be so biased to the quarterbacks. I think they put too much on them for wins as well. Because, like you're saying with the new kid for Clemson, he probably did everything he could, but then his team still lost him the game. But some might credit him with that loss anyway. So I feel like sometimes we put just a little bit too much emphasis on the QB position.
Well, yeah, I would love to see a way for them to evaluate quarterbacks and running backs, or wide receivers are never going to win the MVP. They're not going to win the MVP. It's extremely hard for defensive backs to win defensive player of the year, even though one did one last year. Defensive players winning MVP in itself, it's only happened I think twice. I'll be sound really dumb if I got that one wrong, but I mean, really, it doesn't happen very often whatsoever. And even J.J. Watt a couple of years ago should have won the MVP. I think Aaron Rodgers won it instead. It was Rodgers' second MVP. Watt hasn't won one. Now he's kind of fallen off a little bit. To me, the MVP is becoming a quarterback's award, and I'm not a huge fan of it. I understand that guys who play quarterback obviously impact the game a lot more than any other position right now because of how pass-happy the NFL is. But at the same point, I would like to see a little more variety in the positions that get recognized for that kind of award.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, and we can move on to our final segment here because we have some questions from some sports fans. So this is something we talked about doing last week. We're doing it this week, and you can send us questions for next week's show, or you can ask us one now while we're on air as we're going through these. But the first one is from David, and he asks, "Has Tom Brady's performance shown he is still a good QB?"
I would say yes. I mean, 20 touchdowns, 7 interceptions. I know he only threw 8 interceptions last year. He's already at 7 this season. But you got to think about the number of where those interceptions have come from. 5 of those turnovers have come against the Saints alone in 2 different games. So if you eliminate those 2 games, or even just eliminate the one game against New Orleans from this past weekend, his numbers look significantly better to me. And he's playing fairly well. He had 24 touchdowns all of last year. He already has 20 this season. He's thrown for more yards. He's got a higher passer rating. He's 0.3%. To me, he's playing much better than he did last year, and we're seeing the effect of him playing with a better supporting cast. I still think Tom Brady's a top 10 quarterback in the NFL, despite a terrible game against the Saints this past weekend.
I think he's also a good QB. I think maybe he's not quite what he was just a few years ago, but I think he's still a good QB. I don't really think that can be argued much. He's just having a little bit of a crutch with the Saints defense there. Or pardon me, he's getting a bit banged up by them. So maybe you can't solve a team or two, but there is a little bit of concern for me because, they lost to Chicago, good defense, and then they lost to the Saints twice, good defense. So it gets a little bit more concerning for me there, but I think they have also beaten a good defense also.
Yeah, well, they clobbered Green Bay, which doesn't have a terrific defense, but they did clobber them 38-10. So to me, they've beaten some good teams too. It's not like they just lost to teams that they should have lost to. And they beat the Raiders 45-20. The Raiders also beat the Saints, and they've beaten the Chiefs this year. So to me, they have wins against competitive teams. They have losses against competitive teams. The NFL is very jumbled this year to the point where basically every good team has lost the game to another good team. So to me, it's very difficult to see who's on top right now. Obviously, the Saints seem to have Tampa Bay's number. I think Tom Brady's still a top 10 quarterback. He's not going to be an MVP like he was in 2017. It's just not going to happen again. But he's still going to be a very good quarterback.
Okay, and this one is interesting. David also asks, with the Steelers and Cowboys game being so close, what does this mean for both teams? Did the Steelers play down to the competition, or did the Cowboys game plan stop them for a time?
Pittsburgh played down to the competition, I believe. Although the running game for Pittsburgh hasn't been there the past 2 or 3 weeks. It started off very strong in the first, I want to say, quarter of the season, but after that's kind of fallen apart. And you can game plan to stop the running game, make Pittsburgh one-dimensional. So I'll give Dallas some credit there for that. And their offense played much better than I expected them to against Pittsburgh's usually strong defense. So there's credit that belongs to Dallas in that situation. At the same time, Pittsburgh definitely played down to that level of competition. They're a much better team than that. They had very bad play calling in the first half. They turned it around because Ben Roethlisberger took a larger role in the offense after that. And the defense kind of stepped up late in the game. So to me, Pittsburgh played down. It doesn't say much about Dallas because Dallas, I believe, is still the same Cowboys that we've seen the past couple of weeks. It hasn't changed overnight. Although it does tell me that Pittsburgh is a team that is vulnerable. I mean, they're undefeated, yeah, but they are definitely a vulnerable team. They could lose to a team with a losing record the way things are going right now.
Yeah, and I think it's not at all out of possibility that Mike actually ends up being right, and we get to hear about it for the next couple of weeks. About
No, it can't be. No, it can't be right. The Pittsburgh Steelers must beat the Cincinnati Bengals this week. McGinnis, you don't understand. My life would be hell if he ends up going out there and being right and the Bengals beat the Steelers this week. I will never hear the end of it for the rest of the year.
Oh, man. See, that's the thing, though. Because there are too many things for you and for me, he just loses them in the jumble of other things.
Yeah.
All right.
Well, I did believe Jonathan Taylor was the top running back in this draft class, and he clearly wasn't right about that so far. So I've got one thing on him.
All right. We've got a question from a Seahawks fan now, and that's just a simple question I'm sure pretty much every Seahawks fan is asking. How can the Seahawks defense improve?
All right. I'm going to pull the depth chart real quick. I already have an idea what the roster looks like, but to me, I mean, it's got to be the pass rush to some degree, right? Because the Seahawks had Frank Clark and Jerry Reed together, I think, 2 years ago now. And they were both 10-sack guys at the time. They were carrying that pass rush. But the Seattle Seahawks team right now, Jerry Reed he's been a shadow of himself the past 2 weeks, the past 2 years. They brought Bruce Irvin in. He had Chris Sackey. They brought him in to help out the pass rush. Well, basically, he's done for the year. He got hurt against the Patriots. He's out for the season. You are missing Jamal Adams the past couple of weeks. He comes back, and he's a very good pass rusher, best pass rushing safety in the game today. Better than a lot of outside linebackers are rushing the quarterback. So that helps out a little bit. But young guys like LJ Collier, Rasheem Green haven't stepped up. You got guys, Carlos Dunlap, you just added. Hopefully he can help out. You're expecting him to help out, which is why you traded for him. Alton Robinson, the rookie, has been fairly decent, but he's been more of a situational guy versus the full-time pass rusher. To me, getting after opposing quarterbacks will help it this year. I think it all starts with the pass rush.
All right. You want to read off our last question?
Sure thing. From Will, how many games could the Cincinnati Bengals win in the second half of the season?
All right. So let's look at the Bengals schedule right now. So they play the Steelers. They're going to play them twice. We'll say they lose this week. But then they've got Washington and New York back-to-back. I think they can win both of those. So you're looking at 2 wins. They have the potential to beat the Dolphins and the Cowboys. We'll give them one of those. You're looking at 3. And then they've got the Steelers, Texans, Ravens. We'll give them 1 more of those. So you're looking probably about 4 more wins, in my opinion. What do you think, Sam Teets?
No, I'll go with you. I think 4 wins is reasonable. That's probably the minimum you get out of here. Because I would say Washington. I think you would beat the Giants for sure. I think you would beat the Cowboys, even if Andy Dalton is back at quarterback for them. I think you would beat them there. And then Texans sound like a team that you could beat as well. And who knows? Baltimore, by the way, Baltimore in Week 17, you might be playing Robert Griffin III because Ravens in the past, when they clinch, they have a tendency to pull Lamar Jackson out. They did it this past year. In 17, they played RG3 instead. So you might be playing a backup version of the Baltimore Ravens in Week 17, in which case you're probably going to win that one as well. I would think 4 is the minimum number of games you're going to win the second half of the year. If we're talking the most optimistic scenario, I think you could get Washington, I think you could get the Giants, I think you would get the Dolphins, the Cowboys, and Texans, and maybe the Ravens in Week 17 if they don't slip the quarterback. I think you could get as many as 6 wins in the rest of the season, plus you're going to lose to Pittsburgh twice, and you're going to have to deal with that.
He just can't take even the possibility that the Steelers could somehow lose to the Bengals. But also on the point of the Ravens, Lamar Jackson, the first game they played the Bengals, he did pretty poorly.
That is true. I think Lamar's having a very strange year. I think it's part of the metamorphosis for him. I don't know if it's what the opposing defenses are doing to him. I don't know if his offense has changed. I don't know if it's the offensive line not being nearly as good this year or the run game kind of being disrupted to some degree. I don't know what the issue is with Lamar right now. And I'd be interested to find out next season or if he changes whatsoever. But the Ravens already proven to me they can beat a team like the Colts, who just beat the Titans, by the way, with Lamar having 176 yards total. And he could still beat the Colts. If they could do that to the Colts, they could beat the Bengals again. Even if the Bengals control Lamar like they did the first time, they kind of keep him contained, they're still going to win to me. And I don't think it's even close. I understand that the last game Lamar didn't have play great. To me, the Ravens are just far too talented to lose to the Bengals. You know, Mike has very high opinions of Joe Burrow, and he needs to simmer down a little bit here with the Joe Burrow stuff. Like, come on, man. Joe Burrow's numbers are not that great. I know he's playing with a bad offensive line. But let's face it, he's got a lot of weapons. He got more offensive weapons than Lamar Jackson has. And yet his numbers still aren't that great for this year, as opposed to even like someone like Justin Herbert has much better numbers, even though he's got a better offensive line. So to me, Joe Burrow's a very good quarterback. I don't want to hear any of this Joe Burrow's an elite quarterback stuff this year. Because he isn't. He's not an elite quarterback right now, regardless of what people think. He maybe is top 10, but he's not going to crack that top 5 group. So to me, the talent level is still too high, and Joe Burrow's not the kind of Patrick Mahomes type quarterback who will change the game for you immediately.
Although I will say Joe Burrow has done fantastic considering.
Yeah, considering the offensive line he's playing behind, I think he's done fairly well to just survive the opening half of the season. I mean, he's gotten sacked left and right. He's been dealing with that pressure all year long. Now, he's been sacked 28 times in 8 games. And he's shown mobility. He's completing 67% of his passes. That's great for a rookie. He's averaging 284 yards. Also good for a rookie. The issue is that the 11 touchdowns and 5 interceptions, that's not great. Obviously, that's much. Look at Andrew Luck's rookie numbers. I know Andrew Luck threw quite a few interceptions his rookie year, and part of that is just comes with a flexible team.
So did Peyton Manning.
Oh, yeah, but that's a very different era of football. I mean, you could throw 30 interceptions or close to 30 interceptions back then and still keep your job. If you throw 25 to 30 interceptions now, you lose your job. Ask Jameis Winston. So the thing is, it's a very different era right now. You can't throw 25 interceptions and still be considered a good quarterback. Peyton Manning, Brett Favre, those guys could do it back then in the early 2000s, late 90s, and still be considered good quarterbacks.
Yeah, I was just saying it was a similar early rookie situation.
Oh, yeah, walking into that very terrible situation. Yeah, I agree. And Andrew Luck, I'll say that Andrew Luck has similar spot as well. 23 touchdowns, 18 interceptions with the Colts. Oh, I think Joe Burrow is actually having a better rookie year than Andrew Luck.
Which is saying something. Of course, like you said, he does have a lot of weapons, though, outside of the offensive line.
Yeah. I would argue you would expect a little more production in terms of touchdowns from the Bengals team than what you got so far.
All right. And I think that's all we got for today. But as I mentioned, you can 100% send us in questions, whether it be through mine or Sam Teets' Twitter at Samuel McG22 or
at Sam_Teets33.
Or if Twitter is not convenient for you, or if you don't have Twitter, you can send it to my email at samuelmcg7@gmail.com. And that way you can send in your questions to be answered next week. And I enjoyed the questions we got.
No, we definitely got some good ones. And also, feel free to leave comments on this video if you're on Facebook. We'll go out and check them before next week's show. That way, it was just convenient for you to leave it on Facebook. We can get your question as well.
Yeah, any way you want to leave it, we're totally fine with it. But I think that's all we got.
Yeah, so, I have to remind everyone. I have to remind you all that the NFL show, which, by the way, we do every weekday at 1 o'clock, me and my good pastor, and occasionally McGinnis pops in. We're sponsored by Manscaped because we need money, and this is who's sponsoring us. So feel free to go to manscaped.com and use promo code TGT20 for 20% off your first order and free shipping. It helps out the show. We hit a certain number to become a full-time sponsor, so we'd appreciate that because we need money. And everyone needs money, and especially us right now. So please, first order, promo code TGT20, 20% off, free shipping. It's a good product. It's a quality product. If you can just get past these little commercials, I'm sure you would actually enjoy having it. So thank you to them for sponsoring the show. This is always an interesting read to get through. But thank you for watching the show this week. We're back every Friday at 9:30. And, of course, we've got plenty of episodes. This is already episode 8. We have 7 previous ones, so we're going to go check those out as well. And, again, we hope to see you next week. For now, it's been Sam Teets and Sam McGinnis for the Grueling Truth. We'll see you all next Friday.